Good afternoon, friends. My name is Donna Sassaman, and I'm a member of the local Quaker meeting, the Cowichan Valley monthly meeting of the Religious Society of Friends. And it is my pleasure and privilege to introduce my friend, small f, large f, Linda Taps, who is going to speak with you this afternoon about her experiences. Linda is a mother, a grandmother, and a member, as I said, of our local Quaker meeting. As a Quaker, she is neither pro-Palestinian nor pro-Israeli, but she is pro-peace. Recently, Linda returned from a witness pilgrimage to Palestine and Israel, an experience that deepened her commitment to peace and justice in the region. Currently, Linda serves as clerk of the Quaker Israel-Palestine Working Group. That's a trans-Canada working group of Quakers who are committed to advocating for a just solution to the conflict in the area. Linda is also an active member of the ecumenical group, Canada Stand Up for Palestinian Children's Rights. Her interest in the Palestinian plight began in 1999 during a trip to Iraq, where the experiences of conflict and injustice sparked a deep sense of solidarity with people. Throughout her work, Linda continues to dedicate herself to fostering peace, human rights, and compassionate action within both her local and global communities. I hadn't mentioned that Linda is an amazing photographer, and her photos will accompany her description of what she learned while in Israel-Palestine at this latest time. There will be a time for questions after Linda's presentation, and so please hold your questions until the end, and then we'll make time for that. Thank you very much, and welcome, Linda.
Thank you, Donna, for that very warm introduction. And thank you, Duncan United Church and the Cowichan Valley Quakers for giving me this opportunity to share what I learned on my witness pilgrimage, or some of what I learned. But I think I need to have a little disclaimer here. On my way out, because Donna talked about my photography, on my way out, we spent 2 hours waiting to go through a checkpoint, and I got worried that what the photos that I had on there, so I started to upload them to Dropbox, and in my haste to upload, because I didn't want my camera taken away, and my haste to upload, I actually was deleting my photos before they got up on the Dropbox, so I only have a few, and so I had to borrow a whole bunch from other people. Yeah. Anyway, so I really thank you for being here, and I also thank all of you for coming out. It's amazing that you actually have come, because this subject is so horrible, it's so unbelievable, and we get it every day, and I'm just amazed that people want to come out and hear more. So thank you so much for coming. And I also want to thank the Cowichan Valley Quakers and the Canadian Friends Service Committee for their support in enabling me to go. And my reason for going was because, like many of you, it was really distracting and just devastating that the fact, these people in Gaza were being bombed night and day, constantly, with no safe place to go. And the international community was not stopping it, they were just allowing it to go on, like it's still on now. And our government is letting the permits go for the weapons and weapon components to Israel, which actually is against international law. It's also against our Canadian law, because we signed the Arms Trade Treaty that we agreed not to send any of our weapons to countries that are being used on civilians. So I kept putting out to the universe, what more can I do? What more can I do? And then I got this invitation from Canadian Friends of Seville. Seville is an ecumenical liberation theology center in Jerusalem. And so when I got this invitation, I thought, oh, okay, I have to go. I really have to do this. I have to go. Which, because I felt I didn't have a choice, I had to go. It was so difficult because my 3 sons were concerned for my safety and they didn't want me to go. And as their mother, I didn't want to worry them, but on the other hand, I felt I had to go. So I went. And I went for 2 weeks. And for the first week, there was 14 of us. And we stayed in Bethlehem and went out for day trips every day. And then the second week, there were 49 of us. We went and stayed in Jerusalem. And the 49 people made up people from the US, the UK, 15 Canadians, Mennonites, United Church, Anglicans, Presbyterians, and Quaker faiths, all from Canada. So we went out every day. Sometimes we went from breakfast, be on the bus at 8:30 or 9 in the morning, and sometimes we didn't get back until 7 o'clock at night. Then we had dinner, then we had to have a debriefing. And I have to confess, I think it was the second day before we finished, I thought, and the alarm went off, I can't do this anymore. I was exhausted. But of course I had to. It was good. So,
I can do that for you.
okay.
One
This is
second.
Bethlehem at night, I hope.
Right there.
Right. Yeah, so this is Bethlehem at night, and the buildings in the foreground are the Palestinian buildings, and the buildings that are all the light, the bright lights that are behind are one of the settlements. The settlements all around Bethlehem, and as you can see, they're not restricted by their electricity, whereas Bethlehem, the electricity and the water is restricted. So there's a wall that goes right around Bethlehem, and there's checkpoints in and out. So in a way, it's like Gaza. It's almost like a prison, but you have to have the right permit to get out. And we can change to this one. Yeah, this shows a sign on all the entrances to all the towns and the cities in Palestine, warning Israelis not to go in. They said risking their lives, and it's against the Israeli law for Israelis to go into any Palestinian town. So they're not allowed in Bethlehem. And the people of Bethlehem are grieving. They know the situation in Gaza. So
I'll do the next one. Next one.
yeah, so they know the situation in Gaza. They know how bad it is. They know how they're being bombed and killed and starved and lack of water, because many of them have relatives there. Also, Bethlehem is also suffering because there's no tourists. They're largely dependent on tourism for their economy, and there's just no tourists now. We went to some religious sites. We were the only ones there. There's not even religious tourists there. There was no tourists at all. Shops are closed, and to make matters worse, 250 work permits have been revoked. So men that would have gone out starting to line up at 2 a.m. in the morning for the 5 a.m. opening the checkpoint can no longer go to work in Jerusalem. Next slide, please.
Yep. 1 second. We just had someone join us. 1 second. There we go.
So this shows where the shops are closed, restaurants are closed, hotels are closed. I think we opened up the hotel for us when we were there. And so to maintain this kind of control, it's costly. It's costly for the Israeli economy because they need the military. This is Rabbi Eric Asherman. I met him in Vancouver about 20 years ago. He came to explain that the military was impoverishing the Israeli society. The senior citizens, as well as the Holocaust survivors, were having a hard time putting food on the table. Well, that was 20 years ago, and it's far worse now. I saw him again in 2014 when I went to Palestine. At that time, he was the director of Rabbis for Human Rights. And he put his life on the line all the time. He went out there to try and help Palestinian farmers pick their olives, and the settlers would beat him up. I did see a photo recently of a settler with a big knife chasing him. And the next slide, please. So you probably have all seen these maps before. So it shows. Turn around.
Yep.
So as you see, the first slide shows what the white areas of Palestinian, sorry, Israeli areas, and the green is Palestinian from 1947. The second map shows the UN plan where they gave Israel large chunks of Palestinian land. And then from 1949 to 1967 on the third slide, it shows where Israel has taken more. And oh, sorry, this is working now.
Nice.
Uh-oh. I want to show you. This is the West Bank, and it's called the West Bank because it's the west side of the Jordan River, and this, of course, is Gaza. And so now this is what it's like presently. The West Bank has been broken up into small enclaves with settler-only roads breaking them up, and you all know what's happening in Gaza. And Jeff Halper, an Israeli, excuse me, who is director of Israelis Against Home Demolitions, likens this area, likens the Palestinian area here, where the Palestinians to be like in a hotel room, but they haven't got the use of the corridors. And to make matters worse, on September the 27th last year, 2024, Benjamin Netanyahu was at the UN showing a map of Israel, and there was no Palestine left on his map. So of course, the Palestinians fear this. If no one is going to stop what's happening in Gaza, who's going to stop Netanyahu's next plan, taking over all of the West Bank? So the next slide is
No, it's you got it.
Okay, the next slide is checkpoints. There are many, many checkpoints which we went through, and some of them were closed, and we had to do detours, which cost money, fuel, and time. You can see this one is a real bottleneck. There were 5 lanes going down into one. And our driver, he had to have nerves of steel because he had to take chicken with the other drivers to get through. So when we finally got through to the border guards, usually they just came on the front of the bus and we had to hold up our visas and our passports, and then they just let us through. But 2 times, 2 of the guards got on the bus. One was walking in front down through the bus, checking all the passports and visas. And the other guard was carrying his AK-47 in his hand with his finger on the trigger, which was, a little bit nerve-wracking. And then I thought afterwards, these are just kids out of high school, 18, 19-year-olds. The fear that they must feel that they need to have that kind of a backup. And who's backing up the guy with the gun, right? Someone backing him up. So I really was wondering about that situation for them. Then when we finally got through the checkpoint, we went north to a university, and there was 49 of us. So we broke up into small groups with the university students, and we sat around and chatted with them. And the two women, young women in the middle were a part of my group. That was the other woman with the dark blue jacket is Karen Buck. She's a United Church member in London, Ontario, but she was one of the Canadians. And the young woman with the head covering was explaining it's not only difficult to get a permit to go out to work or to school or medical appointments, it also breaks up family life. She was saying that she used to go on the main road to visit her grandparents. It would take about an hour and a half. Then the main road became a settler-only road, so then it took 7 hours on the back roads to go visit the grandparents. But since 2023, October the 7th, 2023, they've not been allowed out of their city, so she has not been able to go and visit her grandparents, which breaks her heart because she is very attached to her grandfather. So I was wondering, how many of you here are grandparents? Right here. Can you imagine if you couldn't leave Duncan to go to Nanaimo or Victoria or elsewhere just to go and see your grandchildren? That made that go a lump to my throat, and I was thinking how horrible it would be if I wasn't allowed or someone was stopping me going to see my grandchildren. Oh, I just wanted to mention to the woman with the head covering, she's studying to be a clinical pharmacist, and the other young woman is studying to be a lawyer. This is a playground in Bethlehem at a center called WEAM. WEAM is a conflict resolution center, and I understand the United Church has a partnership with this WEAM. You can see that the wall has been built right up close to their center. And it seems like the occupation is controlling every part of the Palestinians' lives. Like I mentioned, the water is controlled, the electricity is controlled, movement's controlled. And sometimes it just seems like it's just meaningless what's going on. One of the directors of WEHAM, his daughter was turning 10, so he organized a birthday party and he invited 30 kids from the refugee camp that was next door. And while they were playing, someone from this watchtower thought it'd be fun to shoot a sound bomb right into the middle of the kids, which was very loud, so scared them, really scared them, and then spray them with skunk water. Skunk water is a chemical that smells terrible, and it's really like our skunk spray here. It's really hard to wash out. So, and then we went south to the South Hebron Hills, where we visited a Bedouin tribe. These Bedouin were nomads in the Negev desert until 1956, where they got expelled. And they bought this piece of land, and they're not allowed to improve their buildings or have electricity or running water. And they're surrounded by illegal settlements. You can see in the background there.
This one or the one before?
Okay. Well, this is the Bedouins, and the next one is the settlers places around, and they're trying to make their lives very uncomfortable. What they've been doing since October the 7th, 2023, randomly in the middle of the night at 2 a.m., they come and raid the town or the village and get all the settlers to go outside at 2 a.m. in the morning, even the kids. And very cute kids. And we had lunch there. Well, I was fearful that our presence there was going to make it more difficult for them at night because the settlers came by in their vans and they checked us out while we were there. But we were just told, we are so grateful that you came. You give us hope to know that we're not forgotten. And B'Tselem is Israel's largest peace group. And they say that the Israel policy threatens 30 the Palestinian villages in South Hebron Hills right now. We also went to visit another family that's trying to keep their land. And this family have owned the deeds of their land since, well, the family has since the Ottoman period. But they're now being told, which is the same as what the Bedouin were told, this is state land and we need it for our firing range. But they're fighting it in court. They've been fighting it in court for 30 years actually, but it keeps getting postponed. And this picture here is an olive tree, and one before was the farmer showing, pointing to the settlements that surround 5 illegal settlements that surround them. Oh, by the way, it's not how I was thinking of settlements, just a small places, like we thinking, you know, when the people first came to Canada, white people first came to Canada, small settlements. Well, these are large towns and even cities with industry in them. And you know, they have been, the settlers have been coming at night with bulldozers and digging up their olive trees. They've actually stolen 100 of these olive trees. In the next slide, it shows they're calling their farm Tented Nations. And the reason it's called Tented Nations is because since 1991, visitors and volunteers have been coming to help out on their farm, but they're not allowed to have any buildings for them, so they put them up in tents. So that's why it's Tented Nations. And recently, one of the settlers, next slide, built this religious school right there on the farmer's land. It's right there. And even more recently, this is really troubling as well, is that they put a road quite close to their fence, which is near their front door, and put 2 trailers on it. There's one trailer that you can see, and there's another trailer behind the tree there. And why that is troubling is because this is how the settlements start. They start as outposts. They'll put on some trailers, then the settlers will move into their trailers, then the military is sent to protect the settlers, then the military want a buffer zone around, and then that's how they continue to grow. So I'm not quite sure what's going to happen there, but that's what happens in the past, and it's really troubling. This young woman, her name is Sahar, and she's an Israeli. She is what the Israelis call a refusenik. And she talked about how all Jewish Israeli kids from the age of just small right up through school are taught that everyone in the world is out to kill them. And they pointed to times in history where that's actually happened. So when they become 18, you don't consider whether they're going into the military or not. And Israel has conscription, by the way. 3 years for men, 2 years for women. So they have no choice, really. Sahar spent several terms in jail for not going into the military. And also, if they don't go in, then they find it really hard to get a job afterwards, because an employer will say, I served my time protecting our society. Why haven't you? But Sahar was lucky because she got a job with the American Friends Service Committee, Quakers, in part because she did not go into the military. And Sahar also said that one of the mandates of the military is to protect the settlers, no matter what. Or I should mention that there are 2 types of settlers. There's the economic ones. They're the ones that move into the settlements because it's a nice place, it's a nice home, and the government subsidized them. And then there's the violent ones. And recently, Ben Gavir, one of the members of the Knesset, have given the violent settlers guns. But for the young conscripts who are just coming out of school, sometimes this is really hard on their psyche, because they're being asked to do things that's against their humanity or their religion. And a friend who actually spoke in this building a few years ago, who was an Israeli and Canadian citizen, she's a psychiatrist who she fears very much for the young conscripts' mental health, because she said that many of them, once they finish their term, they'll go abroad and blow their brains out with drugs. And last month, 6 military personnel committed suicide. Many more have it. Thousands have PTSD and other mental illnesses. One of the days, we decided we would go olive picking. We were going to meet up with rabbis for human rights and 2 busloads of Israelis. We were going to help this farmer pick his olives. And we drove down to the area, and we were just waiting to find out which farm to go to. And we got a call to say that we couldn't go to that farm because the military had shown up and said that farm is now a closed military zone. And it was thought that the reason the military showed up is because one of the rabbis had called the police for police protection, because the week before, the settlers had beaten up the rabbis. So they thought, well, we'd avoid violence that way. So we couldn't go to that farm, and then they were wondering what else to do. So we were going to go to another farm, and then again, the military told the rabbis, we can't go to that farm, because that too is a military zone for a firing range. So we never did go to pick the olives. Let's show the olives. And I was disappointed because I really wanted to sit down and speak to other Israelis, to find out what their thoughts on what's happening. Next slide, please. This is a map of the north part of Gaza and the south, the Negev desert, I think it's the south, and there's a town of Surat there. And Surat was one of the towns that got the Hamas massacre and people kidnapped from that town. And they had built a memorial high up on a hill in the middle of Gaza. So we went to see the memorial, and we overlooked Gaza there. And next one, please.
Oh, sorry.
And when we were looking at that, we could see some grey smoke coming up. So it was thought because the smoke was grey, it wasn't from a bomb, but maybe from some demolition. But we found out later that from the BBC satellite photos that it was a military road was being built, and it was going from the desert through out to the Mediterranean Sea, and it will be completely cutting off the north part of Gaza. And the north part of Gaza had not had any aid allowed in for the last 60 days. That's 60 days from when I was there. I don't know what happened after that, but except recently, the remaining hospital was bombed, and the military personnel were all taken prisoners. But while we were there, it really felt uncomfortable to be looking at Gaza, and knowing that, 45,000 people have been killed, and so many more are injured and being starved, and there's so many orphans there. So when I was there, I was looking at, and I really felt horrible and sickened, because I was thinking of those orphans, and the doctors in Gaza now have a new acronym, WCNSF, Wounded Child, No Surviving Family. So I was thinking, if they have no family, who's going to be there to hug them and soothe them? So we went, like this. We went back into the town of Shadok, where we met with two survivors of the Hamas massacre, October 7th, 2023. And the two guys there are rabbis, and the guy in the center is Rabbi Avi DeBush, and the woman is Ronnie Kada, and they were the two survivors who talked about how terrified they were on that day. And Rabbi Avi DeBush spoke about the 100 hostages that are still in Gaza, and he also talked about how they're all still living in fear there, and he will not bring his children back to live in that town. And I can't blame him really, because, well, when we got off of the bus to go visit, we were instructed, if a siren goes off and you're not near a bomb shelter, just throw yourself on the ground, cover your head. And a week after I came home, 2 missiles actually were sent into that town. And Rabbi Avi DeBush also mentioned that there is a very strong government censorship in Israel. So he thinks that the Israelis don't actually know how bad it is in Gaza because of the censorship. And he fears too that rabbis for human rights are soon going to be made illegal. So this is Ronnie Kada. She's a peace activist, and before October the 7th, 2023, she tried to get, or did get, permits for people in Gaza to be able to get out, to get medical and special services. And so she worked hard as a peace activist, and she said that there are 400 peace groups, Israeli peace groups in Israel, 400. And she also talked about the right of return. Do you remember back in 2018, where the Palestinians all walked non-violently to the wall every Friday for over a year, when many were shot and were dead? In fact, a Canadian doctor from London, Ontario, I think his name is Dr. Lavani, I'm not quite sure what is his name. He was one of the people that was shot during that time. But Ronnie said that she was one of the 1,000 Israelis that walked to the fence on the Israeli side in support of the Palestinians, because they were trying to get the siege of Gaza lifted. Ronnie also said, people here are hurting too, so let's make life worth living for both of us. I'm going to conclude with this very cute child, but that's not the only reason I got her being so cute. It's because if you look at her, you can't tell whether she is a Palestinian or a Jewish Israeli, because they're cousins. They're both Semitic people. So my hope is that when this child grows up, Christians, Muslims, and Jewish people will be living in peace again as they were 100 years ago, before this Zionist, which equals settler colonist project, took hold. So, is there any hope? That is the question I've been asked a lot since I came back. It's a difficult question to answer, but the Palestinians told us time and time again, thank you for coming. You give us hope. We know we're not forgotten. And they also say, Palestinians can't make a change without us going in. So to help make that happen, I have brought a petition which is at the back. It was actually from the United Church's head office. Because it's important that our MPs know that we care about this issue. If they don't know that their constituents care, they're not going to speak out and do anything. So we're hoping that people will sign the petition, take it to the MP, and have him read it out in Parliament. And the ask of the petition is to impose a two-way embargo on arms between Canada and Israel. Investigate whether Canadian arms or weapon components have been used against Palestinian civilians in the occupied territories, including during the current war on Gaza. Review all military and security cooperation between Canada and Israel, and close the loopholes that allow unregulated, unreported transfer of military goods to Israel through the United States. And one other thing that you can do is send a letter, which also comes from the United Church head office, and Linda Ellen has printed up some templates for you to take the letter and personalize it to send it off. So I thought I would leave this up for a bit so if anyone wants to write down the the addresses. And I'd like to recommend two videos, two new current videos that are very good. One is Where the Olive Trees Weep, and the other is Rooted in the West Bank, 25 years of defying settler violence. And that follows a family that's been fighting the settler violence for the last 25 years. And in it is the person I mentioned before, Jeff Halper, who is the director of Israelis Against House Demolitions. So that's my sharing, and I thank you so much for coming and listening, and I'm open to any questions. We're going to go. Yes, you. Yes. Yes, the petitions are right there on the table. Yes, there you go.
Any reason? I'm sure there are political reasons. Is there any reason? I'm sure there are many political ones why Canada does not take action. I've written to my local MP a long time ago. I just get pattern response.
Can you repeat the question through the mic, please, for our people at home?
The question is there any reason our government won't take action? Yeah. That's
Yes.
a very good question. Yes. Yeah.
Correct.
Can anyone answer that question? Because
Corruption?
yeah.
No, I think America. America.
Oh.
America says jump, we jump.
Make a lot of money out of signing laws, right?
Oh yeah, with it's a big industry. Even Canada has a big industry. It's a myth that we're not against wars.
The answer that's coming from the audience is, one is because we're subjected to US and armaments, big industry, money. So yes, one would agree.
Because we are a separate society ourselves, if our government decides that they're going to go this way, then they literally have to decide what they're going to do about it. Stance we have here, which is we acknowledge we're on unceded territory, but us are precious little. So taking a stand as a settler colonial state makes it very difficult.
I think perhaps we need to have people come to the mic with questions or comments, because the people that are on Zoom can't hear. Yeah. So that was a comment about the fact that we are ourselves a settler society. Yeah. Would you like to come to the mic?
I think my voice is big enough.
Not for the next thing.
Oh, come on up, man. Come on up. Get on camera.
I just wanted to give a brief comment about the settler condition in Canada. When I was in Israel following the Oslo Accords with my blind Lebanese Canadian friend, poet John Asfour, we spent a lot of time interviewing settlers, we interviewed Palestinians, many of whom had been in jail. We interviewed Saad Arkat, the head of the Palestinians. And I spent one afternoon talking to a Palestinian woman, who was an Israeli woman who was a settler, and she had nothing good to say about the Palestinians at all. In fact, she said, we call them West Bank Indians. Stunning comment, and very appropriate for a visiting Canadian to hear that. Not only an insult to the Canadians, but an indication that they justify their conditions sometimes by talking about Canada and its colonialism and its apartheid system. So I think it's a very interesting and important designation to keep in mind at all times. And I just will add one other little note. I spent time talking to the head of the Samaritan people. This is a small Jewish sect of only 900 people. This was in 1994. These are the only Jews that have been permanently in Palestine from the original times. And I asked him how he felt about the Israeli project, and he said, we have no use for that project. We call ourselves Palestinian Jews.
My vocal cords certainly need this. They're a little dodgy. But what's not dodgy is my relationship with the talk today. I've been studying it for a long, long time. And half of my life in Canada was spent in the Arctic with Indigenous people. My children are Indigenous. My friends were 99% Indigenous, and I represented them in politics and hired and trained and all those things. And then now my grandchildren are here in the valley, and they have a tough time.
Hold the mic up.
They have a tough time in this valley, and their parents have a tough time. Studying 5 or 6 years to become teachers and be pushed back because they're trying to encourage Indigenous children and their parents to send them to school. And my daughter is incapacitated now, my youngest one. She's sensitive, not like her sister who pushes back, but she's sensitive and she's suffers from severe anxiety, and she'll probably never teach again. But it's been my honor to support her, without question, whatever it takes to keep her vision alive, but being a teacher and wanting to work with children. And that's tough, but it's the road that I choose to follow. But the other part that I really wanted to say something about, of course, I have a lot of respect for Canada and Canadians, and a lot of respect. I had the one thing that I learned about when I came to the Arctic 50 years ago, that Gordon Lightfoot is a great singer, and I connected with him as the first entertainer artist in Canada, but also that CBC was my connection to the culture of Canada. And I didn't feel isolated, even living in the Mackenzie River Delta and the Beaufort Sea. I felt connected, but I felt let down recently in the last few years. And I've actually switched off my CBC and put my radio away. I get better things from Democracy Now! And some other places that I feel are the truth. And I feel that my civil rights have been diminished. I can't speak freely without infuriating some people or becoming a risk of being what would you say, censored in some way. And I think that doesn't show well for the Canadians' third. That there are various divisions, we know that. But we should be allowed to speak with to the dignity of those who are suffering, and the fact that they've got a voice and they're silenced. And that's not right for Canada. It's the first time I think I've seen that. But anyhow, I appreciate the opportunity to say something. And years and years ago, I had an opportunity to go and work in the West Bank just before the pandemic. And I was ready to go and say, come, because my background, a lot of it is in horticulture and growing and things like that. And also another important aspect of what they could do. And this doctor said, come, Doctor of Horticulture, come. And I wasn't able to do it, so I'm so glad that you were there.
Thank you. What, yeah. What's that?
I just wanted to ask, so when you took off on this trip, I was not convinced that you would be allowed into Bethlehem, into Israel. So tell me why you think you guys were allowed to do what you were able to do.
Money.
Yeah.
There's no tourists, right? I thought we took, first of all, we put no tourists, because pilgrimage, for pilgrimages to just look at the religious sites, you know, we're thinking Canadian American dollars. And because not only is Palestine hurting, but also Israel is hurting, because there's not the tourists going to Israel right now, because there's not flights into Tel Aviv. We have to go through Jordan. And we didn't have any trouble going through. We went as a group. They thought we were just a harmless Christian group and going to the birthplace of Jesus. So that was no problem getting in. But coming out was a bit more tricky. For some reason, we don't know why, we were going through the first checkpoint on our bus, and our bus got pulled aside, and we just sat there for 2 hours. We'd already been traveling for an hour, and you know, a lot of us as seniors, we needed the bathroom, but we weren't allowed to get off the bus and go to the bathroom. So this is when I was busy trying to put my slides up on the Dropbox, right? And we sat there for 2 hours, and we didn't know how long we were going to be there. And then suddenly we were told, oh, you can go now. No explanation. We went through, and I have to tell you that their X-ray machines are so sensitive, they even picked up the little hooks on my bra, so I had to pat it down. But then when we finally got through to where we were going to be questioned, he just said to me, what's your full name? I told him, and then the Joyce passed. Okay, goodbye. That was it. After all my fear.
Yeah.
So, you know, I just think they appreciated the fact that we $1 million, yes.
Has your faith been shaken from being over there?
Has my faith been shaken from being over there? No, in fact, I think my faith has grown because of the people I was with and the people I met. There, as I said, there were 49 of us on the second week. Many were religious people who were also ministers of churches. And one woman was a choir director, so we did a lot of singing on the buses when we were traveling around. And we met with a lot of Christian people who had a lot of faith in what was going on. And I think the Palestinian Christians' faith is what was sustaining them. Yeah. Yes.
The question was, why is this still happening? I'm Catholic. If you criticize the Pope, I don't think you're called anti-Catholic. If you criticize the Archbishop of Canterbury, you're not anti-Anglican. But if you criticize Israel, you become anti-Semitic. And we bought into that. in a big way. Our politicians have bought into it and they use it to try to quiet the criticism. I think we have to fight against that label. Anti-Semitism is a problem in Canada. It is a problem. We can't deny that. As a Catholic, I remember talking to a man called James Carroll, who wrote a book called Constantine's Sword. Carroll tried to research and prove that the Holocaust, anti-Semitism wasn't a Catholic problem. And the result of his investigation was, yes, it is a problem. It comes to us through our mother's milk as Catholics. It's part of our history. So anti-Semitism is a problem. But criticism of Israel is not anti-Semitic. It's the criticism of a state. It's the criticism of Canada or the United States or whatever country, what that country is doing to people in its territory. So I think we have to fight against that label that is cleverly used by the Israeli lobby in Canada, by people in power. We can criticize the state, we can criticize the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, without being anti-Semitic, because we're criticizing what they are doing, not what they are believing.
Thank you so much for what you shared. I just wanted to build on what you were sharing about this definition of anti-Semitism. I was really curious about why there's this really strong voice around criticism of Israel being defined as anti-Semitism. So I did a deep dive, and I'll just share really briefly, and you can do your own research at home, but there's essentially two working definitions of anti-Semitism. The IHRA, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, has a definition of anti-Semitism that includes any criticism of the state of Israel. There is a different definition of anti-Semitism that a group of Jewish scholars from around the world have come together to create, and it's called the Jerusalem definition of anti-Semitism. And it purportedly states that criticism of Israel is not anti-Semitism. What is happening is that the IHRA's definition of anti-Semitism has been taken up by the lobby, has been taken up by the powers that be. And so we have a problem of language that's influenced by politics, right? Where we actually don't agree across the world what anti-Semitism means. And there are these two very divided, radically different perspectives on what that means. And so it's helpful to know which definition we're working from when we're speaking with people about how criticizing Israel is not anti-Semitism. And we can refer to the declaration that these esteemed academics and thinkers have come up with, as opposed to just saying it. Like, it's not anti-Semitic. It's like, well, there's a whole bunch of people out there who are following this definition that says that it is. So we need to know that in order to be strategically moving forward and away from that. So I just wanted to offer that small piece of information.
I wanted to say something about the hostages. You know, yes, it was a terrible thing that the Hamas came and kidnapped these people and took them off and so on. But if you remember, when they did the hostage exchange, there were half a dozen, I can't remember how many hostages were released, and multiples of that released from Israeli prisons. And why are there so many more? And one of the things is that if you have a prison record, they won't let you through the checkpoints. Okay? But a lot of the Palestinian prisoners are people who have been, like as teenagers, chucking stones at the military, or very trivial things that you wouldn't think of putting people in prison for. But they then have a prison sentence that means that they can't move, basically. And I can't remember what the conclusion of this, but I'd just like you to know that that is the situation. And it gives you some angle on the hostage exchange.
Thank you.
And as a member of Canada Stand Up for Palestinian Children's Rights, I just want to add that before October the 7th, 2023, 700 children, that's not more than one day, was actually put in prison for throwing stones, guilty or not, because it was a military court. The military court had 99.9% conviction rate, and that's gone up a lot since October the 7th, 2023.
I have a question more than anything, and that is, what's the point? What's the end goal? How will any of these actions lead to peace? How will this lead to the grandchildren of the Israelis living in a safe world? What is the end that people are looking for, and is what their actions going to result in it? I just don't fundamentally understand the point.
Do you want to answer that?
Well, I want to rephrase it.
This has been going on. I lived in Ramallah when it was part of Jordan when I was a child, so over 70 years ago. Nothing has changed since Israel became a state there and took over. So what has to happen to stop this? This is ludicrous what's going on, and I don't see any way. When I asked you, so it's America, I've written to my country, what a waste of time. What has to happen? Something has to happen. There's to be a fundamental shift. My daughter says, shoot Netanyahu, but I'm not sure I want to do that.
We have to keep hounding our MPs. We can't just give up on them. We have to keep hounding them. There's not much that we can do to stop the Americans.
No.
If the Americans cut off the money, the Zionist project would end right away. They need that money, they need those arms. They depleted their economy. They're suffering right now. But what we can do is stop being complicit. We have to make sure that our government stops allowing the permits for the weapons or the weapon components to go.
I just want to address the question of what is the point? And in a certain sense, when we look at the small numbers that meet and act in Duncan and in Nanaimo and other places, there's a certain argument that I'd be listening to and say, there is no point. What's this small group of people going to do? Except that these small numbers are duplicated across the country and around the world. And I think when you write to an MP and you get a very bland response, first of all, when you're talking to MPs, and maybe this is unfair to MPs, they're not interested in questions like what's right and wrong, what's legal, what's moral. They want to know how much power you have. And if you write, one person writes to them, oh, okay. And then as more people begin, oh, then they say, there is a point of view that I had better take into account, and they might modify or shift in some small way. But yes, we have a lot of work to do because I'm part of that group that is in Nanaimo Saturdays. We are the corner of Terminal and Comox Road. And there's a small band of us, and we walked through the downtown and out again. One thing I can tell you, and because I've been standing there on the street for years, the responses we're getting from people are shifting. There is an increasing, still a minority, there's an increasing number who are giving us a positive response. Now, we have an awful lot of work to do before they actually pull over their car and come and stand with us. But still, for some of them, that's their first public expression. Or semi-public when you're in your car, I guess you could say semi-public. So what is happening is painfully slow in many ways, and but I compare it to that change that's happening in a big heap of snow, a small molecular change that you can't see. You don't know what's happening until it collapses. And suddenly, and so I guess I just want to, and I mean, I believe, yes, I think we could be more effective than we are, but I still believe that we are being effective to some degree. We're part of a worldwide movement, and I guess I would close by quoting Greta Thunberg. No one is too small to make a difference.
I need to clarify. I don't mean what is the point is what this is. Okay? What you did fundamentally matters. Witnessing us being here fundamentally matters. What I don't understand is what the government of Israel is doing. And what their long-term, if their long-term objective is the safety of Jews or whatever their definition is, how is their actions achieving that? That's the point I don't understand. I totally support the individual actions that we all take.
Yeah. Good.
I like how polite this audience is, all coming one at a time.
I have a question. I'm very interested in hearing about actions within Israel. I know there are groups within that are aware, that know what the government is doing, and are trying to take action. And I wonder if you have you met with them, are there things you can say about it? I get email from a group called Standing Together. I don't know much about them, but they say that they're a large group of people if they're both Jewish and Muslim, well, Palestinian, you know of them. Okay. Well,
Cheers. Thank you. Thank you. Oh. What's your step?
Are you going to answer the question? I've only just read about this, so I haven't got any deep knowledge, but I think Hebrew scholars, if there are any here, would certainly be able to put me right. But I read that back in the days of Moses, God promised Moses that the children of Israel would have all the land that now comprises part of Syria, Lebanon, Palestine. And this is the ultimate goal, to find God's word through Moses by getting the land that God promised him. That's what I found out.
That is what the violent settlers believe too. But that's only part of what the Bible says. The Bible also says, and to my knowledge, that they have to be stewards of that land and care for the people from it. A big difference. Maybe on this there was more.
It was also all the children of Abraham.
Could you repeat that?
Okay. Ruth has said it's also all the children of Abraham. Well, that's also Palestinians, right? Yeah. So there was a question to me before that. Oh yes, about the peace groups. Yeah. this time I really only met with rabbis and human rights. But last time I went there, I was meeting with quite a few other different ones. Refuseniks, Israelis against house demolitions, and people in Bet Salama, and was it? As when Kayla said, there's 400 of them. There's 400 peace groups in Israel, Israeli peace groups, all working on different issues. And a lot of people have left. And they say there's a certain percentage of Israelis that are for what's happening in Gaza. But a lot of people have voted with their feet and left Israel. Somebody wanted a question. Oh, Karen.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Linda, for your remarks, and thank you for sharing your experience with us today. I'm interested in your remarks about saying more about the Israeli child who's educated to believe that the entire world is against them. Also, how entrenched is the view of an 18-year-old who was educated in Israel, their belief, because it's in their law, that nobody else has political rights besides them. How entrenched is the view of an 18-year-old educated in Israel that Palestinians are in fact inferior to them?
Coincidentally, I just heard Ilan Pape yesterday on a webinar talking about that same issue. He said that it's systematic in Israeli society to dehumanize Palestinians. So from now I'm taking it's very entrenched.
One of the questions, which was from Rhoda, as to why Israel, and presumably backers of Israel, continue to operate as they do. And I could speculate about that, but I would just say that it is not obvious to the people deeply involved in something, making it happen and leading it, and if that's something that seems to us terribly, terribly, terribly wrong, it is not obvious to them that they cannot, by continuing to do and do even more extreme versions of what they've been doing, that they will not, in quotes, succeed. But it is quite obvious to me that no empire, no human-made system lasts. It may collapse, it may substantially change, it may be destroyed, because everything Israel does is based on, its focus is on land and on power, and always using force, trying to inspire fear and harm people in terrible ways. The inevitable response to that from at least some people, whether it's a large group or a small group, whether it's a group that would be considered guerrillas or whether it's the army of a particular state, is going to be violence in return. And in fact, Israel, it seems to me, exists for violence. And in that, it's sort of like a small version of our, as I like to say, great neighbor to the south. The other question about some of the alternative voices in Israel and initiatives in Israel, there is. It's relatively small, but there is a committed, continuously developing, genuine, and I mean genuine with a capital G, left in Israel. And it receives very little publicity. So there are people in the mainstream media and governments in Canada and the US and so on, when they talk about the left, they're talking about some members of the equivalent of parliament in Israel who may belong, let's say, to the so-called Israeli Labor Party, which is just maybe a little bit slightly to the left of the most extreme right in Israel. And also the assumption that Israel, as a matter of policy, is doing things for reasons which are rooted in the Bible. Israel was created by and large by secular Jews many of whom very proudly had rejected their religious background, and it is still very much dominated by secular Jews. And finally, this question about, if you criticize Israel, you're anti-Semitic. This was being used as far back, and I'm sure well before then, but as far back as the 1940s, before the modern state of Israel even formally came into existence. And it has been used repeatedly again and again and again. And it always manages to work and intimidate and freeze and confuse some people. One other thing, the question of what Jewish Israelis know in Israel today. And I think there are two aspects to that. One is the media has cooperated by and large very, very well with the government in trying to prevent people from getting any picture of what it is their army, their state is actually doing in the Gaza Strip, and for that matter, even in the West Bank. There is a great deal of censorship, and anyone who tries to speak out is in one way or another attacked. But there's also a kind of an internal conspiracy within people's minds and hearts, where just as, I hesitate to make this comparison, Nazi Germany, people didn't know, in quotes, because they did not want to. And I say that as a Jew. Okay.
I just put a question out too. We have 3 people online. See if anybody has a question for you. So just let you know, okay? No, I'm just waiting for them to reply. So just FYI, we still have 3 people at home online watching you. I just asked them if they have a question, so I'm just waiting to reply.
Okay. While you're waiting for that, I was just remembering when Harry was speaking, like when the Zionists before Israel was invented, given to Israel, to the Palestinians, that they were putting pressure on the government in England, and the one person who was against it was a Jew who said Israel would be anti-Semitic. I wish I could remember his name. I'll have to look it up again.
The British, is it Edwin Montague?
Yes, I think so, yes, Edward Montague, yes, you're right, yeah. The one person who was against it was a Jew, so anti-Semitic, that's quite incredible. But it still happened. Was there any questions?
Nope, we're all good.
Okay. So I want to thank you all for coming again. I'm really impressed that you've actually come out. And as I said before, it's such a horrible situation that's going on, and there doesn't seem to be any end right now. And you come out to hear more. Right. I admire you all. Okay. Oh,
you have to ask people here to give you money. You need money.
Oh, we were going to, I don't know. We need to do a donation for the church. No, we don't. Okay, thanks for that. Thank you for that. But I will remind you about the petition, because I still feel, even though politicians may not answer us, we need to keep pounding. So, votes really, Parliament.
Exactly. Thank you, Linda.
Okay.